So what exactly is the Qur'an? Lexically, the word means that which is recited, from the Arabic verb qara'a, that which is read, that which is recited, oft recited upon the tongues of the people. And indeed, if there's one thing that the Muslims are proudly obsessed with, then it is the continual recital of this final and last testament all across the countries of the world today. By its technical definition, the Qur'an can be said to be the Arabic speech of God, the direct speech of God through the angel Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad, which he revealed to Prophet Muhammad in wording and in meaning, and which has been preserved in the physical copies, that which is known as the Mus'haf, and has reached us in an undisputed fashion. And according to the academics and the experts from all faiths and none, the Qur'an is indeed miraculous, and in so many of its different aspects, known really only to the specialists. But for us, we can also understand a little bit of these miracles just from a brief look. For example, firstly, in its prose text, in the style and its rhetoric and its eloquency, something which cannot be appreciated except in the pure Arabic language. It is an unsurpassed work of beauty when one studies Arabic. Secondly, in the detailed information that it contains from the previous times and the predictions that it has made previously that have now come to light. Thirdly, in its transformational ability upon society. Historians have declared the spread of Islam as a social movement based upon this message as something unsurpassed in history. Fourthly, in its preservation. The book itself, not a single word within this copy of the Qur'an has changed in 1400 years. This copy, there's only one copy, a single copy. There is no other multiple version. Fifthly, in its simplicity and how easy it is to memorize. We do not just base our memorization of the Qur'an on the specialists. Hundreds, thousands, and millions of Muslims across the world have memorized this book due to its ease and its simplicity. Sixth, in its validity still today, despite being 1400 years old, it embraces all forms of modern knowledge and development and has not run away from embracing that. Despite being a book of scripture and morality, it has actually enriched the various fields of the sciences themselves. Seventh, and this is probably the most profound, in its deep meanings. From academics to the masses, we have them spend their entire studying lives reflecting and thinking about its deep contextual basis and meaning. Perhaps no other book in history, qualitatively and quantitatively, has been studied, discussed, criticized, written about, reflected upon, and benefited from as much as this final testament in the trilogy of the three magnificent scriptures that make up the core testaments of divine scripture. So how did the story of the Qur'an come to fruition? Can you imagine that such a book came upon a man, an illiterate man, who could not read or write, in the harshest of desert environments, an orphan, both parents passing away whilst he was very young, no brothers or sisters, and being brought up by an uncle. This was an era of time in Arab society where the Arabs were living in a time of turmoil, ignorance and war, where the rich quite literally ate the poor, where battles raged for 40 years over something as insignificant as the ownership of a camel. We're not talking about land and countries and world war, but over the ownership of a camel. There is the famous battle of 40 years between these Arab tribes, where idols were worshipped that were made by the hands of these people from sweet dates. They would make them themselves and then worship them, where adultery, illicitness and oppression and the like was the norm. So our scene for the place of revelation has been set. Yet within 3 decades, not only had the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, changed his local desert environment, but rather he initiated an empire that spread from Spain to China, which transformed the nation and indeed transformed half the world. Not just according to the Muslims, but even as declared by many Orientalists and other non-Muslim experts of history. He came with a teaching that echoed all that in the Old and the New Testament, the same message as the previous prophets, and a call and an invitation to the world to purify themselves from the internal spiritual diseases and to come to light and guidance and return back to the sincere worship of the one true God.
وقفينا على آثارهم بعيسى بن مريم مصدقا لما بين يديه من التوراة وآتيناه الإنجيل فيه هدى ونور ومصدقا لما بين يديه من التوراة وهدى وموعظة للمتقين.
And in their footsteps we sent Jesus, son of Mary, confirming that which was before him, and we bestowed on him the gospel, wherein is guidance and a light, confirming that which was before it in the Torah, a guidance and admonition to the God-fearing.
It is this light and guidance which the Qur'an, the last testament, tries to revive as found before in the Old Testament, the Torah, and then the New Testament, the Gospel.
وأنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه من الكتاب ومهيمنا عليه.
And to you we have sent down the book with the truth, confirming whatever books were before it, and a witness over them.
And that is why we have chosen this title, because it was a continuation after the two previous testaments. Nothing new as such, but rather the continuation of a core theme. Despite the fact that many Muslims might not be comfortable with this title, the Last Testament, it's not a name which has been given to it before by any of the scholars, something which has not been used except for, of course, the Old Testament and the New Testament. But it should make sense to the Muslims, because the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, said in an authentic narration, "My similitude in comparison with the other prophets before me is that of a man who has built a house nicely and beautifully, except for a place of one brick in the corner." There's a little gap in the corner for one brick. The people go about it and wonder at the beauty and the perfection of this house, but they say, would that this brick be put in its place, this missing brick? So I, the Prophet said, am that brick, and I am the last of the prophets. Now notice in this narration, this is a sacred narration known as a hadith. He did not say that he was the house. He did not say he was the beauty. He did not say that he was the perfection. He did not take the credit for everything that he was being sent with. He just said the corner. He indicated just to a little part of the house to show his humility, to show his respect to the giants of prophethood that had preceded him, such as Adam and Noah and Abraham and Moses and David and Jesus, the giants of prophethood, mountains. We marvel at their excellence. The Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, said he completed the series, the history, the message, the favor of prophethood. He completed it. That he was the final one sent, and indeed the seal of the prophets, sent with the seal of the scriptures, with the last testament, after which there would be no other, and thus God's favor upon mankind completed.
اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا.
This day I have perfected your religion for you, and completed my favor upon you, and chosen Islam for you as a religion.
So how, ladies and gentlemen, did this book come about? Muhammad was a simple man, a shepherd, one who was well liked by his people, and even before he claimed prophethood, was known as the trustworthy one. His name, Al-Amin, the one who is trusted. He was known for his simplicity, his reflection, and his periods of isolation. He would often go to the mountain of Thawr, which is in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia, current day Saudi Arabia, to a cave called Hira in Mecca itself, to worship. But he didn't know how to. How am I meant to worship to what I understand to be the master of the universe? I don't believe this action of the rest of my people towards idols and towards their wealth and towards their family and so on. I understand there's something there, but how can I do it? What was he to do? One day when he was in this period of isolation, almost meditation if you like, in this cave, a man appeared before him and pulled him by his gown and squeezed and said to him, "Iqra, read." The Prophet was an illiterate man. "Ma ana biqari', I can't read. I don't know how to read." The pressure increased, pulled so much that he thought he was going to be strangled. "Read." "I can't read." read. I can't read.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم.
Read with the name of your Lord who created. He created man from a clinging clot. Read, your Lord is the most generous. Who taught by the pen, he taught man what he did not know.
5 verses revealed to him all of a sudden by a man who's come out of nowhere, who's nearly killed him from squeezing him. He doesn't know what to do. He was terrified. This is just in the cave. He ran out of the cave. Heart pounding, starting looking left and right what to do. He looks left, he looks right, he looks in front, he looks behind him. There's nothing. But he feels something. So he looks up. And when he looks up, he sees a huge creature filling the horizon as far as the eye could see.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والنجم إذا هوى ما ضل صاحبكم وما غوى وما ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي يوحى علمه شديد القوى ذو مرة فاستوى وهو بالأفق الأعلى ثم دنا فتدلى فكان قاب قوسين أو أدنى فأوحى إلى عبده ما أوحى ما كذب الفؤاد ما رئي أفتمارونه على ما يري.
By the star when it sets, your companion is neither in error nor is he deceived. Nor does he speak out of his desires. This is but a revelation revealed. He is taught by one mighty in power, perfect in form as he grew clear to view. When he was on the upper horizon, then he drew near and came down, till he was at 2 bows' length, rather even nearer. Thus he revealed to his slave that which he revealed. The heart lied not what in he saw. Will you then question what he saw?
He was shocked by what he had just seen. And if it wasn't enough what had just happened inside the cave to suddenly to witness this mighty event. This scene, as explained in Arabic, suggests it was a combination of might and beauty, the two most strongest of emotions to mankind. The angel came so close to him that he was almost suspended above him. Then he called him and said to him, "O Muhammad, you are the true messenger of Allah." But he needed comforting. He needed support, and so he went running to the one person that he could trust, his wife. He found his wife and told her everything. And by God, she was the right person to go to at this time. He said to her, cover me, bring me some water.
يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر ولربك فاصبر.
O covered one, arise and warn. Magnify your Lord, cleanse your garments, and keep away from all impurity. Do not give to receive more. Be patient for the sake of your Lord.
These verses were a comfort to him. He was scared and he was worried. He'd asked to be covered. He had been covered by his wife. God had responded immediately. O covered one. He was addressing him directly. Here was hope, here was light, that some understanding could be achieved now from what had been happening. His wife Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, was at this time the rock that he could depend upon. And she knew what to do. She said, calm down. God will never humiliate you. You help the needy people. You help the guest. You help those suffering. Come with me to my cousin. So she took him to her cousin. Waraqa ibn Nawfal, a Christian, a wise man, and an old man, well respected in the society of the Arabs at the time. She said to him, "Oh my cousin, listen to Muhammad. Listen to what he has to say." After he had explained to him the story, the verses that he had revealed, the angel, this event, Waraqa said to him, "What you have seen, O Muhammad, is what all of the prophets from before have experienced. Never did a message come to a prophet except that the people did that to him, put him under stress, made him believe that what you're having is not real prophethood or revelation, but something else. If I am alive at the moment that the revelation is confirmed, I will support you." But sadly, he passed away a few weeks after that. And here was the problem. A long period of time of silence. Nothing. No verses, no revelation, no angels, nothing. The Prophet became worried. He started to wonder, am I going mad? Did I have what happened? Did I see this? He started to wonder about himself, about what was going on, so much so that he wanted to kill himself. The stress was that much. He went to the mountain and he tried to throw himself off, but an angel came and stopped him. He could not throw himself off because the angel would not allow him to do so. "You are the true messenger of Allah. Wait." And so at this time, when it was nearly all so lost, with no revelation, with this period of silence, of this darkness, suddenly there came the light.
والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث.
By the mid-morning and by the night when it is still, your Lord has neither forsaken you, nor is he displeased. And the hereafter will be better for you than this world, and your Lord will surely give to you, and you will be satisfied. Did he not find you an orphan and give you shelter? Did he not find you wandering and guide you? Did he not find you needy and enrich you? As for the orphan, do not oppress him. And as for the beggar, do not repel him. And as for the bounty of your Lord, proclaim it.
And from here on, we had then the start of the continual revelation of the Qur'an over a period of 23 years. Split into two main phases, the Meccan phase and the Medinan phases, which we'll explain a little bit later. But this Meccan phase, in the birthplace of the Prophet, where the believers were very few and the society was against them, you'll find that there's a specific pattern to the verses, that they are short and impactful, heavy and deep in meaning. As his wife Aisha radiallahu anha, may God be pleased with her, said, when revelation came to him, sometimes it would force him into a deep sweat in the most freezing cold of nights. Once when it came to him whilst he was on a camel, the camel collapsed under the weight of revelation upon the Prophet Muhammad. Another time, when he was sitting cross-legged in a circle with another of his companions sitting cross-legged, the thigh of the companion was under the knee of the Prophet. Revelation came, the knee dug into the thigh of the companion, and he said in the hadith, I thought it was about to burst.
إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا.
We shall cast upon you a weighty discourse.
So now the years start to get on, the verses become longer and longer. And it was now that the Prophet, upon whom be peace, started to become worried. Would he be able to memorize all of this? Would he be able to recite this? Would he be able to keep up with his teacher Gabriel, who's telling him all these verses? But then God gave him strength and said to him,
لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه.
Do not move your tongue to hasten it. Ours it is to gather it and to recite it. But when we have recited it, follow its recital. Then ours it is to make it clear.
with the Prophet Muhammad's mind now at rest, he now knows that the Quran is being revealed. He now knows that he has been chosen as the one to take this message. He now knows that the preservation and the recital will be covered by God. He now has that satisfaction. Now then we start to see in the Quran, in its chronological fashion, the verses that start to now call to the fundamental creed of Islam and define what it is, and to define to the believers what they're actually entering into. And first of all, of course, God was described by His wonderful names and attributes to show to the people who their Lord really was.
هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم.
He is God, besides whom there is no other God, knower of the seen and the unseen. He is the all-merciful, the compassionate. He is God, besides whom there is no other God, the sovereign, the holy, the source of security, the guardian, the mighty, the compeller, the proud. Transcendent is He above what they associate. He is God, the creator, the originator, the modeler. His are the most beautiful names. All that is in the heavens and the earth glorifies Him. He is the mighty, the wise.
Then the people were introduced to their real forefathers, the mighty, the wonderful, the marvelous prophets of God Most High.
وتلك حجتنا آتيناها إبراهيم على قومه نرفع درجات من نشاء إن ربك حكيم عليم. ووهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب كلا هدينا ونوحا هدينا من قبل ومن ذريته داود وسليمان وأيوب ويوسف وموسى وهارون وكذلك نجزي المحسنين. وزكريا ويحيى وعيسى وعلياس وزكريا ويحيى وعيسى وإلياس كل من الصالحين وإسماعيل واليسع ويونس ولوطا وكلا فضلنا على العالمين ومن آبائهم وذرياتهم وإخوانهم واجتبيناهم وهديناهم إلى صراط مستقيم.
That is our argument. We gave it to Abraham against his people. We raise by degrees whom we will. Verily, your Lord is wise, knowing. And we bestowed upon him Isaac and Jacob. Each of them we guided. And Noah we guided before. And of his seed, David, Solomon, Job, Joseph, Moses, and Aaron. Thus do we reward those who behave with excellence. And Zachariah, John, Jesus, and Elias. Each one was of the virtuous. And Ishmael, Elisha, Jonah, and Lot, each one of them we preferred over the worlds, with some of their forefathers and their offspring and their brethren. And we chose them and guided them to a straight path.
And from these prophets, the focus on the key figures such as Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Muhammad, upon all of them be peace, is unmistakable. But it's a special position in the Quran for the story of Jesus and his blessed mother, told in many places, but perhaps none more beautifully so than in one chapter named simply Mary.
واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهب لك غلاما زكيا قالت أنى يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أك بغيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين ولنجعله آية للناس ورحمة منا وكان أمرا مقضيا فحملته فانتبذت به مكانا قصيا فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا فناداها من تحتها ألا تحزني قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة تساقط عليك رطبا جنيا فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا ذلك عيسى ابن مريم قول الحق الذي فيه يمترون ما كان لله أن يتخذ من ولد سبحانه إذا قضى أمرا فإنما يقول له كن فيكون وإن الله ربي وربكم فاعبدوه هذا صراط مستقيم.
And make mention in the book of Mary when she secluded herself from her people to a place towards east. She used a screen to hide herself from them. Then we sent to her our spirit, and he took before her the form of a perfect human being. She said, I seek refuge with the All-Merciful from you, if you fear the Lord. He said, I am but a message bearer of your Lord, to you the gift of a pure son. She said, how can I have a son when no man has ever touched me, nor have I ever been unchaste? He said, so shall it be, your Lord said, this is an easy thing for me, and we shall make him a sign for mankind and a blessing from us. It is a matter decreed. So she conceived him and went in seclusion with him to a remote place. Then the labor pains brought her to the trunk of a palm tree. She cried, oh, that I would have died before this and become a naught, a thing forgotten. But a voice cried unto her from below her, do not grieve, your Lord has placed a stream beneath you. Shake the trunk of the palm tree toward yourself. It will drop upon you ripe, fresh dates. So eat, drink, and be consoled. And if you see any human being, say, I have vowed a fast for the All-Merciful, and will not speak to any human this day. Then she came to her people, carrying him. They said, O Mary, truly a villainous thing you have done. O sister of Aaron, your father was not a wicked man, nor was your mother unchaste. So she pointed towards him. They said, how can we speak with he who is in the cradle, a babe? Spoke he, verily, I am the servant of God. He has given me the book, and he has appointed me a prophet, and he has made me blessed wheresoever I may be, and has commanded me to pray and to give charity to the poor as long as I live. And he has made me dutiful to my mother, and he did not make me oppressive, wicked. So peace be upon me the day I was born, the day that I die, and the day I shall be raised up to life again. Such was Jesus, the Son of Mary, a statement of the truth about which they dispute. It is not befitting to God that he should beget a son. Transcendent is he. When he determines a matter, he simply says to it, be, and it is. And Allah is surely my Lord and your Lord. So worship him. That is the straight path.
So after the prophets, we now had the focus change to a very important aspect of the Quranic message, the Day of Judgment. The concept of being held accountable for all of one's actions was vital to the Islamic creed.
إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره.
When the earth is shaken with its earthquake, and the earth yields up its burdens, and man says, what is with it? That day it will proclaim its news. Because your Lord inspired it, that day mankind will come forth in scattered groups to be shown their deeds. And he who has done an atom's weight of good will see it, and he who has done an atom's weight of evil will see it.
So the reason for this constant repetition in the Last Testament of heaven and hell and your good deeds and your bad deeds is to keep reminding the people of the hereafter and the transient nature of this life, to not allow materialism and the love of life to blind us to our key ethics and moral values.
وما هذه الحياة الدنيا إلا لهو ولعب وإن الدار الآخرة لهي الحيوان لو كانوا يعلمون.
And life of this world is but a pastime and a game. Indeed, the home of the hereafter, that is life, if they but knew.
So the creed had been declared, the belief system of the Muslims had been established, but now it was time to start to tackle the problems of society. This was the time when it started to focus on the evils and the crime that had become rife as part and parcel of life in the Arab lands, such as the burying, if you can possibly imagine, of girls alive upon birth just for the reason that it was not a boy.
وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت.
And when the girl child that was buried alive is asked, for what sin was she murdered?
For what sin was she murdered? This is the question that will be posed to those people who did this on the Day of Judgment. A direct question from God, stunning in its impact upon the people who did crime. And likewise, all the groups of people who were involved in illicit activities and those things which were against the morality of society according to the Muslims were dealt with. It commanded, therefore, the Qur'an after that for the rights of the slaves and orphans and the feeding of the poor and the assistance of the needy to a wealthy people, the Arabs at that time, who were notorious in their abuse against these specific groups.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد أيحسب أن لن يقدر عليه أحد يقول أهلكت مالا لبدا أيحسب أن لم يره أحد ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين فلاقتحم العقبة وما أدريك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو أطعم في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة.
No, but I swear by this town, and you are a dweller in this town, and by the Father, and that which he begat. Indeed, we have created man in hardship. Does he think that none has power over him? He says, I have squandered abundant wealth. Does he think that no one has seen him? Have we not given him 2 eyes, a tongue, and 2 lips, and shown him the 2 roads? Yet he would not attempt the steep road.
And what will make you know what the steep road is?
It is the freeing of a slave, or feeding on a day of famine, of an orphaned relation, or a needy man in distress, and then being among those who believed and advised one another to patience and advised one another to mercy. Those are the companions of good fortune.
And now that the Prophet upon whom be peace, had started to become listened to, his followers and disciples were desperate to memorize and retain this wonderful message. They'd write it on anything they could find, from bones to paper, despite the fact that there at that time were very few natural material resources that they could use, and thus most of them retained this message in their hearts. The message: to call the people to the sincere worship of the one and only true God, and to abandon all other idols besides. He called for social justice with the family, with the neighbor, with the guest, with the orphans, with the stranger. A complete package that was to become the core tenet of true Islam.
واعبدوا الله ولا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا وبذي القربى واليتامى والجار ذي القربى والجار الجنب والصاحب بالجنب وابن السبيل وما ملكت أيمانكم إن الله لا يحب من كان مختالا فخورا.
Worship God and associate nothing with Him, and show kindness to your parents and to your close kindred and to orphans and the needy and to the neighbor who is of kin and the neighbor who is not kin and the fellow traveler and the wayfarer and whom your right hand possesses. God does not love the arrogant, the boastful.
But there was a problem. He, the Prophet Muhammad, was calling a people who were very comfortable with their primitive and ignorant lifestyle from every angle. And as you all know, those who are comfortable with something, whatever it may be, hate to be challenged, always fear the unknown, never like to come out of their comfort zone, hate to embrace change, however right and moral that change may be, and however wrong the actions of those people may be. So the best defense from their point of view against this Islamic ideology was to try and rubbish it from the offset.
وعجبوا أن جاءهم منذر منهم وقال الكافرون هذا ساحر كذاب أجعل الآلهة إلها واحدا إن هذا لشيء عجاب.
And they marveled that a warner from amongst themselves has come to them. And the disbelievers say, this is a magician, a liar. Does he make all gods just one God? That is indeed an incredible thing.
So the challenge started. But the way to fight back with the people who value something is to use that which they value. And uniquely for the time and place, the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, was calling a people who had no other concern but to compete with one another in eloquence, rhetoric, language and poetry. This is what they saw as the peak of civilization. And so they were targeted in the Qur'an by its magnificence and unique literary structure. As I mentioned, the very first miracle, which can only be understood with a deep study of the Arabic language. It came to them, the Qur'an, when recited upon these disbelievers of Makkah, the Quraysh, that's the tribe was called, the Meccan leaders. It came to them in a way that they had not seen before. It wasn't like their poetry. It wasn't like the statements of their soothsayers. It wasn't like anything they had heard before, and they'd heard everything before in Arabic. So they forced themselves to write it off as magic. It was the only way. This kind of plotting of the enemy of the Prophet is aptly described when referring to him as a single person.
إنه فكر وقدر فقتل كيف قدر ثم قتل كيف قدر ثم نظر ثم عبس وبسر ثم أدبر واستكبر فقال إن هذا إلا سحر يؤثر.
For he thought and plotted, may he perish, how he plotted. Again, woe to him, how he plotted. Then he looked round. Then he frowned and showed displeasure. Then he turned away in pride. Then he said, this is but the magic of old.
Of course, it makes sense that in society people will be feeling threatened by something which is new. But in particular, there were those that felt threatened specifically by this divine message. And according to them, there was a hidden agenda. A hidden agenda aimed at overthrowing their rule and positions of respect and power. And so, according to them, it must be defeated. This opposition was to continue in full strength. So it then started into a mocking campaign.
إن الذين أجرموا كانوا من الذين آمنوا يضحكون وإذا مروا بهم يتغامزون وإذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم انقلبوا فكهين وإذا رأوهم قالوا إن هؤلاء لضالون.
The criminals used to laugh at the believers and wink at another as they passed by them. When they returned to their people, they would return jesting. And when they saw them, they used to say, "These are indeed astray."
Passive words, nothing violent, nothing physical yet. Others use this as an opportunity to try and humiliate and embarrass the Muslims by other means. For example, some started to put unrealistic challenges to the Prophet.
وقالوا لن نؤمن لك حتى تفجر لنا من الأرض ينبوعا أو تكون لك جنة من نخيل وعنب فتفجر الأنهار خلالها تفجيرا أو تسقط السماء كما زعمت علينا كسفا أو تاتي بالله والملائكة قبيلا أو تكون لك بيت من زخرف أو ترقى في السماء ولن نؤمن لرقيك حتى تنزل علينا كتابا نقرأه قل سبحان ربي هل كنت إلا بشرا رسولا.
They say, "We will not believe in you until you make a spring gush from the earth for us, or you possess a garden of palms and vines, and cause rivers to gush forth abundantly amongst it, or you cause the sky to fall upon us in pieces, as you say, or you bring God and the angels to meet us, or you have a house of gold, or until you ascend into heaven. And even then we will not believe in your ascension till you bring down for us a book that we can read. Say,
Transcendent is my Lord. Am I but a human messenger?"
Then the campaign against the Quran stepped up a gear. It was now time for the disbelievers, for the Quraysh clan, to use force.
وإن كادوا ليستفزونك من الأرض ليخرجوك منها وإذا لا يلبثون خلافك إلا قليلا سنة من قد أرسلنا قبلك من رسلنا ولا تجد لسنتنا تحويلا.
And they indeed sought to provoke you and thus drive you out of the land, and then they would have stayed only a little after you. The way of those of our messengers we sent before you, and you will find no change in our way.
Many of the Muslims were killed and tortured. They didn't want to leave, but some were forced to leave. And some were given refuge in the land of Abyssinia by a Christian king called Najashi. Some were forced to remain behind to hide their Islam and practice in secret. This obviously caused difficulty amongst this fledgling community. Financial and family boycotts, ridicule, violence led to the formation of one of the earliest concentration camps recorded in modern history in Makkah itself, the camp of Sha'ab Abi Talib. It was a difficult and depressing time. But the believers were commanded by God to be patient. In fact, in this last testament, the Quran, over 90 of its 6,000 odd verses concentrate on patience against adversity.
واصبر وما صبرك إلا بالله واصبر وما صبرك إلا بالله ولا تحزن عليهم ولا تك في ضيق مما يمكرون إن إن الله مع الذين اتقوا والذين هم محسنون.
Endure patiently. Your patience is only by God. Grieve not for them, nor distress yourself because of what they devise. God is with those who are conscious and those who act with excellence.
There were others, of course, amongst the Arab Muslims who had converted, who enjoyed family protection, enjoyed status, and had that kind of liberty to be able to defend themselves in a way that was not afforded to the others. So they actually started, with God's blessing, on an intellectual defense of their religion, using the Qur'an itself against those who were attacking them, upon the invitation of God when He said,
ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين.
Call to the path of your Lord with wisdom and kindly exhortation, and reason with them in the most courteous manner. For your Lord knows best those who have strayed from His path, and He knows best who are rightly guided.
the Qur'an continued to emphasize the use of peaceful means and an intellectual debate with their enemies. In fact, the very first use of the word jihad in the Qur'an is all about striving with these evidences in the Last Testament.
فلا تطع الكافرين وجاهدهم به جهادا كبيرا.
So do not obey the disbelievers, and strive against them with it a great striving.
But things continued to get worse, in fact unbearable. The believers were openly murdered, and having no permission from God to fight back physically and defend themselves, the practice of their religion was forced underground. And understandably so, under so much incredible pressure and danger, the Muslims were forced to flee for their lives to the city of Madinah, approximately 450 kilometers north of Makkah, in an event called the Hijrah, or the emigration. Thus we have the community that went with Muhammad, that left every single thing behind that they owned, from their friends and their family to their homes and businesses. These were called the emigrants, the muhajirin.
للفقراء المهاجرين الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم وأموالهم يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا وينصرون الله ورسوله أولئك هم الصادقون.
And for the poor emigrants who have been driven out from their homes and their belongings, who seek favor from God and His good pleasure and help God and His messenger, they are the truthful.
As for the people in Medina who then, likewise, sacrificed all that they had and openly welcomed them to share whatever the emigrants wanted from them, this group was called the helpers, i.e. the Ansar.
والذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان من قبلهم يحبون من هاجر إليهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون.
Those before them who had homes in the city and embraced the faith before them loved those who have emigrated to them. They entertain no desire in their hearts for they may be given, but rather prefer them above their own selves, even though poverty is their lot. And whoever is saved from his own avarice will surely succeed.
It is these two wonderful groups of Muslims that are recognized in the Qur'an and are put forward as model Muslims for the rest of the generations to come, for the rest of this nation that follows them.
والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا ذلك الفوز العظيم.
As for the foremost, the first of the emigrants and the helpers, and those who followed them with excellence, God is pleased with them, and they too are pleased with him. He has prepared them gardens beneath which rivers flow, where they shall dwell perpetually. That is a supreme triumph.
So here the Quran shows the excellence of those who open their arms to the persecuted. And in this Medinan model, we have a society that opened their arms to the poor, weak and oppressed. And here I'd like to mention something, and let me be frank. Many of us here in the UK are different in colour, different in faith, different in culture, and yet the British accepted those from our forefathers who are not originally or ethnically from this land and gave them hope, shelter, education, justice, honour and freedom. Once upon a time we, and I speak in a generic sense on behalf of all of those people whose ancestors have come to this country at some time in history, we were in need, and today many other people from them, Muslim, non-Muslim, continue to look to the UK for help and support in times of difficulty and persecution. And the Prophet, upon whom be peace, said in a very important narration, the one who doesn't thank the people has not thanked God. This Muslim community, amongst others, our society today, must recognize this favor. And perhaps this is something which is easily forgotten as people like myself enter into the second and third generations of immigrant Muslims in this country. As a reminder to us all, God says,
هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان.
Is the reward of goodness anything but goodness?
So it is little wonder then how the massive majority of the British Muslim community is horrified that a tiny minority would go against not just common sense and basic humanity, but also the direct word in the Last Testament itself when they indulge in terrorism against the UK. In fact, it's not an attack against the UK, but rather it is an attack upon us, the Muslims, upon the Last Testament and indeed upon Islam itself. All we can say to such people is what God himself says to them.
لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين وأخرجوكم من دياركم وظاهروا على إخراجكم أن تولوهم ومن يتولهم فأولئك هم الظالمون.
God does not forbid you as regards those who did not fight you on account of faith, and did not expel you from your homes, that you do good to them and deal justly with them. Surely God loves those who maintain justice. God forbids you only concerning those who fought you on account of faith and expelled you from your homes and helped in expelling you, that you have friendship with them. Those who make friends with them are unjust.
So now the Prophet and his followers have been welcomed into Medina. We entered the Medinan phase of revelation of the Quran, the second stage. He was now chosen to become their leader in this new society and thus developed the first constitution of Islam. Not only focusing on the immediate needs of the people with respect to their finances, their shelter, their education, their health, the constitution was also quick to organize the relationship between the Muslim and non-Muslim communities into one unified state. And all the remaining verses then of the Quran concentrate on all of these legal aspects, giving divine and prophetic guidance on issues as diverse as marriage and divorce, to inheritance, to family law, to individual behavior, to political conduct, to human rights, to even the etiquette of conducting warfare. A complete system for all of mankind, for all of eternity, was detailed in this group of verses known as the Medinan verses. So for example, with respect to business dealings, contracts and trusts,
إن الله يأمركم أن تؤدوا الأمانات إلى أهلها وإذا حكمتم بين الناس أن تحكموا بالعدل إن الله نعم ما يعظكم به إن الله كان سميعا بصيرا.
God commands you to render back things held in trust to their rightful owners, and that when you judge between people, that you judge justly. Surely, excellent is the exhortation God gives you. Verily, God is all-hearing, all-seeing.
and then problems concerning the family, infanticide, abortion, poverty.
ولا تقتلوا أولادكم خشية إملاق نحن نرزقهم وإياكم إن قتلهم كان خطأ كبيرا.
Do not kill your children for fear of poverty. It is we who provide for them, and for you too. Indeed, killing them is a great sin.
And then morality and decency in open society.
ولا تقربوا الزنا إنه كان فاحشة وساء سبيلا.
Keep away from illegal sexual relationships, for it is an indecent thing and an evil way.
Fairness, truth, and justice in all forms of social and business contracts was continuously emphasized.
وأوفوا الكيل إذا كلتم وزنوا بالقسطاس المستقيم ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا.
And give full measure when you measure, and weigh with even scales. That is fair and better in the end.
Perhaps the most clearest expression of injustice during contracts concerning wealth is the application of interest throughout the deal, something which the entire world at the moment has been thrown into turmoil over, as the leaders of the interest trade, i.e. the banks, have used and abused humanity to no end. Christianity and Judaism have always suffered with this different treatment differentiation between usury and interest. Aristotle didn't seem to have that problem and said, and I quote, "Of all modes of getting wealth, this is the most unnatural." The Quran likewise does not accept interest in any form whatsoever.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تأكلوا الربا أضعافا مضاعفة واتقوا الله لعلكم تفلحون.
O you who believe, do not live on interest, multiplying your amounts many times over. Have fear of God, that perhaps you may be successful.
And also, in one of the most significant statements in history, due to the fact that no society on the face of the earth at that time treated their women with fairness and justice, let alone equality, God said,
ولا تتمنوا ما فضل الله به بعضكم على بعض للرجال نصيب مما اكتسبوا وللنساء نصيب مما اكتسبن واسألوا الله من فضله إن الله كان بكل شيء عليما.
And do not desire the things which God has given to some of you in preference to others. For men, there is a share of what they earned, and for women, a share of what they earned. Pray to God for His grace. Indeed, God is all aware of everything.
Now I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, so, what's so special about that? We have all of that today. But what you need to realize is that we're not talking about giving women these rights in the modern free world, post the suffragettes or anything like that in the 21st century. What we're talking about is a radical departure from the Dark Ages, bringing supreme immediate change to an oppressive darkness, and thus quite literally rewriting the rules book. It was truly a landmark event. Just imagine that yesterday, in our society today, that women were owned. They could not keep what they earned. They were actually inherited from person to person. Inheritance from their own family members was something which was not given to them. And then tomorrow, it's all changed. That's the impact you've got to think of. Don't think of it as we have struggled over the last 100 years to slowly by slowly achieve the rights that we have achieved today. This was the impact of these verses upon the society at the time. Yet regardless of all of the Qur'an's calls to justice and regulations with its advice and legal system, the plotting of the leaders of Mecca became even more intense, especially when they started to collaborate with the forces within Medina and those surrounding it to destabilize and indeed destroy this new fledgling state based upon the faith of pure monotheism and the practice of all the prophets of God. Despite that, they were determined. They confiscated all their assets. They blocked all their trade. The boycott was devastating. The loss of friends and family we know already unbearable. The loss of life through murder and massacre outside almost unforgivable. Yet worse for the Muslims than all of that was the banning by the Meccan Qurayshi leaders of any Muslim to visit the Grand Mosque in Mecca, the most holiest place in Islam. And so from here, and finally, indeed almost reluctantly, the Qur'an suddenly declared that it was now justifiable for the Muslims to fight back.
أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم بغير حق إلا أن يقولوا ربنا الله ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لهدمت صوامع وبيع وصلوات ومساجد يذكر فيها اسم الله كثيرا ولينصرن الله من ينصره إن الله لقوي عزيز.
Permission is given to those who are attacked because they were wronged, and God is indeed able to give them victory. Those who have been expelled unjustly from their homes only for saying, "Our Lord is God." For had it not been for God stopping some men by means of others, then monasteries, churches, synagogues and mosques, wherein the name of God is often mentioned, would have been destroyed. God will always help those who support him. Indeed, God is powerful, exalted in might.
In these verses, not only was permission being given, but also an example was being given to the Muslims. That I, God says, have sent the prophets before you, and their synagogues and their monasteries and their churches have likewise gone through the same. And I commanded patience upon you, and now the time has come for you to fight back. And thus a series of battles erupted between the Muslims and their enemies, all detailed in the Qur'an. From the Battle of Al-Badr, which was won by the small band of Muslims in Medina at the time, to the their shock defeat, during the revenge attack at Al-Uhud in Medina, and then to the battle called Al-Ahzab. The Muslims were told to fight back and defend themselves and their faith with strength and nobility. Complete pacifism was not to be equated with Islam anymore, and now the new state had a foreign policy and an army, just like every other nation and state in the world. Yet despite all of these wars and battles, the Muslims still only wanted to be able to visit their holy place in peace, the Grand Mosque in Mecca. And despite patience being commanded for so long, and fighting being prohibited for so many years, and then eventually permission being granted, the Qur'an makes it manifestly clear that it is always a state of peace that is desired, and should always be the status quo.
وإن جنحوا للسلم فجنح لها وتوكل على الله إنه هو السميع العليم.
And if they lean towards peace, lean to it and place your trust in God, for he is the all-hearing, the all-knowing.
Place your trust in God. Don't doubt what they say. Yes, they may be up to something else, but if they've come to the table, you go to the table. Put your trust in God. An incredible verse where the Muslims are being told, it doesn't matter. They may have betrayed you before, they may betray you again, but if they go for peace, you go for peace. Put your trust in God. And so after some of these damaging battles, Muhammad and his companions decided to give reconciliation another try. And they left peacefully for a pilgrimage to Mecca from Medina, a pilgrimage known as the Hajj, as you know. And they left their weapons at home in Medina, so they went completely unarmed. But they were stopped en route and forbidden to enter and forced to go back to Medina. Thankfully, they were not killed. But here then for the first time, what was interesting is that peaceful negotiations seemed a real possibility and talks were entered into. Yet despite the willingness of the Prophet Muhammad to continue these discussions, all of the Muslims viewed it as a major defeat and humiliation due to the many oppressive conditions demanded by the Qurayshi leaders of Mecca. Yet despite Muslim anger and confusion, the Prophet Muhammad accepted all of these conditions in replacement for the ability and the permission to go and make the pilgrimage to Mecca without being harmed. And it is this event which the last testament, the Qur'an itself, declared as a manifest victory.
إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليغفر لك الله ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر ويتم نعمته عليك ويهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله نصرا عزيزا هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عليما حكيما ليدخل المؤمنين والمؤمنات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ويكفر عنهم سيئاتهم وكان ذلك عند الله فوزا عظيما.
We have indeed given you a manifest victory, that God may forgive you of your sin, that which is past, and that which is to come, and may perfect his favor upon you, and may guide you on a right path, and that God may support you with a mighty support. He it is who sent down tranquility into the hearts of the believers, so that they may have more faith added to their faith. Gods are the hosts of the heavens and the earth, and God is knowing, wise, so that he may admit the believing men and the believing women into the gardens underneath which rivers flow, wherein they will abide, and may expiate for them their sins. That, in the sight of God, is an immense triumph.
Yes, peace had indeed been victorious, an immense triumph for it. And now the Muslims were allowed to worship in peace, which led to a period of stability and happiness for thousands of new believers, despite the fragility of the tentative new peace deal. But then 2 years later, the terms of this peace treaty were comprehensively and indeed violently broken by the Quraysh leaders of Mecca, placing the Prophet in an untenable position, which led to a decision by the Prophet to lead the Muslims and march on Mecca. Yet he entered in without any bloodshed whatsoever, entering in complete peace and humility. In fact, the Prophet returning to his birthplace after having been tortured, humiliated and expelled, entered not like a vengeful king, but rather a humble slave, riding a donkey, and with his head bowed so low as he entered the Holy Land that it was almost touching the saddle. And the Prophet said to the gathered masses from the disbelievers of Mecca, who of course were worried, "What do you think I will do to you?" The people knew that they were in for serious trouble, having committed what we could simply call war crimes today upon the Muslims simply for their belief. They were silent. Yet the response from the Prophet Muhammad has become a statement of history and marvel due to his magnanimity and mercifulness. He said, "Go, for you're all free." And with that declaration to the Meccans, he then turned to God and supplicated, "La ilaha illallah wahdah, sadaqa wa'dah, wa nasara abdah, wa hazam al-ahzab wahdah." There is nothing worthy of worship except God. He was true in his promise. He helped his slave. He defeated the confederates by himself. In this supplication, there's so much for us to take. From the humility of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, in these words, especially emphasizing that it was he, God, that gave victory. To him, not the messenger, the Prophet, the grand leader, but to his slave. He called himself the slave, humble, the humility. That it was he, God, who had defeated the confederates, not us, not the Muslims. And with that he entered Mecca and pardoned the people therein, and thus the holiest site of Islam was established and preserved until this day. 2 years later, the Prophet Muhammad entered Mecca again with 120,000 followers and gave his only and last Hajj, the pilgrimage. and then delivered his famous last sermon, wherein he protected the rights of women, abolished racism, and established the sanctity of human life as ordained so in the last testament from God himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to conclude with one of the most profound and most repeated verses of the Qur'an that makes us Muslims so grateful for this sacrifice of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to bring for us, preserve, convey, and then teach to us this last testament as part of God's immense divine favor upon his creation. As God says to us,
ألف لام را تلك آيات الكتاب المبين إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين.
Alif, Lam, Ra. These are the verses of the manifest book. We have sent it down as an Arabic Quran so that you may understand. We recount to you the best of narratives by revealing to you this Quran. Before this, you were among the unaware.
Mercy and blessings from above descend ceaselessly on Medina. People feel the joy, people feel the love in the city of Rasulullah. A perfect path he laid for everyone. He lived and died for us, what have I done? I have forsaken his life, I have abandoned his way. Oh Allah, now my time has come. Deep in my heart I feel a change has begun. Deep in my soul I feel the warmth of the sun, burning bright with Iman on the road to Ihsan. All my obstacles I will overcome. Peace be upon Rasulullah, peace be upon Habiballah, peace be upon Muhammad, peace be upon Shafi'ullah, peace be upon Khair Khalqillah, peace be upon Muhammad, last of the Anbiya. Without his sunnah we disgraced, people rushing in order to embrace the rahmah that Allah sends down to this place, to the city of Madinah. Every language and color you can see, there is unrivaled hospitality, and dates that's as sweet as the smile of a child. Oh, I feel so unworthy. Peace be upon Rasulullah, peace be upon Habiballah, peace be upon Muhammad, peace be upon Shafi'ullah, peace be upon Khair Khalqillah, peace be upon Muhammad, last of the Anbiya. Oh, how my mind races back in time to the day in Medina he arrived, and the people came running happily outside to welcome the messenger. For his call was to worship the one, their hearts united with the beating of the drum, and the children were singing praises to him. I wish I could have been there with him. Peace be upon Rasulullah, peace be upon Habiballah, peace be upon Muhammad, peace be upon Shafi'ullah, peace be upon Khair Khalqillah, peace be upon Muhammad, last of the Anbiya. Standing before him I realize that I have strayed. Oh Allah, give me the strength to mend my ways. With tears in my eyes I sincerely pray. Deep in my heart I feel a change has begun. Deep in my soul I feel the warmth of the sun, burning bright with Iman on the road to Ihsan. All my obstacles I will overcome. Peace be upon Rasulullah, peace be upon Habibullah, peace be upon Muhammad, peace be upon Shafi'ullah, peace be upon Khair Khalqillah, peace be upon Muhammad, peace be upon Rasulullah, peace be upon Habibullah, peace be upon Muhammad, peace be upon Shafi'ullah, peace be upon Khair Khalqillah, peace be upon Muhammad, last of the Anbiya.
Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وبارك على سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم وسلم عليه.
There is no man more dear to me throughout the whole of history than the one who was sent as a guide, leading people from darkness to light. His message was simple and clear, that there is one God whom we must all fear, inviting people towards Allah. His name is Muhammad Mustafa. His name is Muhammad Mustafa. بلغ الأولى بكماله كشف الدجى بجماله حسنت جميع خصاله صلوا عليه وآله. He is the greatest man of all time. He came to teach the whole of mankind that we must worship only one Lord. Besides him there is no other God. Islam is what he came to teach. To every corner of the world did he preach, that we can all come together and pray to the one who provides us each day, to the one who provides us each day. بلغ الأولى بكماله كشف الدجى بجماله حسنت جميع خصاله صلوا عليه وآله. He was a shelter for the orphans and poor. He is my only ticket for the heaven door. He confirmed all that was said before. Then the whole world do I love him more. I swear if I only had a chance to go back in time for one glance at the face of Muhammad Amin, I would wonder whether I've had a dream. I would wonder whether I've had a dream. بلغ الأولى بكماله كشف الدجى بجماله حسنت جميع خصاله صلوا عليه وآله. দিবানিশি বলি রে মন আর দিও না যন্ত্রণা দনে যদি হইতাম দনি যাইতাম সোনার মদিনা যাইতাম সোনার মদিনা بلغ الأولى بكماله كشف الدجى بجماله حسنت جميع خصاله صلوا عليه وآله بلغ الأولى بكماله كشف الدجى بجماله حسنت جميع خصاله صلوا عليه وآله صلوا عليه وآله
محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نور سطع في المدينة محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نور سطع في المدينة قلبي وفؤادي هاموا بك يا هادي قلبي وفؤادي هاموا بك يا هادي زادي وزوادي هدي محمد نبينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نور سطع في المدينة من عمر ساحاته بالذكر وآياته من عمر ساحاته بالذكر وآياته من رافع راياته مين غير طه نبينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نور سطع في المدينة من سجد سجوده من شهد شهوده من سجد سجوده من شهد شهوده من وفى بعوده مين غير طه نبينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نور سطع في المدينة من صلى صلاته والصبر في كاساته من صلى صلاته والصبر في كاساته والقرآن حياته مين غير طه نبينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نور سطع في المدينة يا خير البارين سطع في المدينة خصوا بالشفاعة رب العرش ساعة خصوا بالشفاعة رب العرش ساعة من مكة حبيبي نوره سطع في المدينة محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نوره سطع في المدينة محمد نبينا بنور وادينا محمد نبينا بنور وادينا من مكة حبيبي نوره سطع في المدينة طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع ما دعا لله داع. Oh, the white moon rose over us from the valley of Wada, and we owe it to show gratefulness where the call is to Allah, where the call is to Allah. أيها المبعوث فينا جئت بالأمر المطاع جئت شرفت المدينة مرحبا يا خير دار مرحبا يا خير دار. Oh, you who are raised amongst us, coming with a word to be obeyed, you have brought to the city nobleness. Welcome best caller to God's way. Welcome best caller to God's way. طلع